And then the process of the punishment and the ramifications of the investigation, what happened then?
I think it was a difficult time for the club because it's not as though we'd been subjected to something similar before. So we assumed a process would be followed, which is instructive within the competition's rules and regulations. I mean, there were two umpires present. There was a official present, in fact, a match referee. The game was recorded on video. And so what we were expecting was some type of process where we would be called in, have a hearing, give evidence. But what eventuated was that other than the batsman involved in the initial skirmish, not a single representative of the club, not the crowd, not anyone from the crowd, not anyone else from the team, not anyone else from the club was accorded with some sort of a notice to show cause. Why were you involved in a fight? Nothing at all. Like I said, we've got umpires there where the opposition, there were probably half a dozen reports made. In fact, we received a commendation from the match referee of our crowd controlling behaviour. We had a bloke there that is involved in security. And so the process was just not followed. And we're sitting there waiting to see what the ramifications of the investigation were. Would we be called in to come and give evidence? To our observations, what we did. In fact, I think I procured about a dozen statements, signed statements from witnesses present at the club to show that no one from the crowd did anything wrong. And in fact, we were charged as a club, as in its entirety, as opposed to individuals being charged individually for whatever their contribution was, which was, it wasn't just unjust. It was not following a process. And as a club secretary, as a club captain, as a lawyer, that's not just unjust. That's it's improprietous. It's wrong. It's wholly wrong. And so that formed the crux of what then transpired with respect to trying to make contact with the association, with endeavouring to say, well, can you give us what we did wrong? Can you give us what are the charges against us? What are the allegations against us? Are we going to have a hearing? When's our hearing? It was completely circumvented. And what happened was no charges, just a finding. And the club was taken completely by surprise and completely gobsmacked. You've gone from winning a premiership, having that celebration effectively destroyed, and then waiting for the better part of a couple of months. And in the space of those 6 to 8 weeks, having zero contact with the association, despite by myself multiple attempts, correspondence and messages and phone calls to the president at the time, and no engagement. And that's just wrong. That's not how it works. And what eventually happened was that there was a notice to deregister the club, and that's without process. That's without any administrative process. It was against not only the competition's rules. It's actually against the rules of association, and that's where I changed my hat from being a club secretary to being a lawyer. In fact, to being a litigation lawyer, which really it actually upset me, because the whole point behind us playing socially in an organised sport is you want to be there. You want to have fun. You want to see kids play. You want to see older members play, and it was quite devastating for that purpose. It effectively meant the potential destruction of the club, and so that investigation was quite awful. And probably the acknowledgement of that investigation as being awful was the retraction after the first court proceedings. So and then obviously we went through the remainder of the process, which I'm sure we're going to discuss.
And John, the decision to pursue that and the decision to take that on and to say this is unjust. I'm curious around A, getting everyone on board, and B, what it cost you personally, emotionally, etc., to fight what the decision was made.
Well, if I can consider it chronologically, the decision that was made to deregister us occurred sometime in May of 2023. So that's the better part of 7 weeks post grand final. Then obviously there's an internal process of dispute which was unsuccessful, kicking it upstairs to the cricket union, which was also unsuccessful, and so making the decision to take legal proceedings was an easy one for me because I knew the ramifications of the decision, and so it was a situation of, well, we either fold the club or we fight this. And folding the club at that stage, which was, we're talking about a club that's 90 years old, and folding the club that's not an option. And so the decision to take legal action was on my advice and the documents that were prepared. And the emotional toll to me, I can put to the side because I became pretty clinical about it. As a legal practitioner and as someone who my practice is personal injuries, and I fight for injured workers and injured people. That's what I do, and I saw this as no different. David versus Goliath, if we want to get biblical about it, and I saw, and so that wasn't a problem. But the emotional toll of the club, the pressure that the board, that the committee faced at the time, the president and vice president at the time, because again I was the secretary there, are two of my closest friends as well, and so that was incredibly important for me to do so. And so it ended up being that for the first court case, it ended up going to Heidelberg Magistrates Court, where the opposition caved in before basically the door of the court. So we were vindicated. And I was correct in my assumptions. I was correct in my advice that they hadn't followed a process properly. So that was an initial victory. And then, to be fair, I don't even see it as a victory. I see it as a vindication. It's you got to do things right. You got to do things properly, and it just wasn't done. And so that was the initial court case. But then again, the association determined that they wanted to see the end of Camrea in another way, that Camrea had been subject to various infractions over the previous few years, which again was not the right way to go about it. In my own opinion, I don't question what associations do. They've got to run a competition. They're charged with the governance of that. And so they went through that again. And so we had to go through another court case in Melbourne at the Magistrates Court here, where the actual application was run. That application for an injunction, as in to allow us to continue playing whilst the primary case was considered, was then ultimately successful again. So we get another win. And from then on, we go back to playing. And the amazing thing about that that following season 23-24 is that our now A-grade side, our JICA Shield side, actually made the A-grade grand final. So we're talking about a club that was steadfast in its belief that we're here to do the right thing, and we're talking about a club that galvanized its members, and we've got such a strong membership base, such a good group of people from the age of 10 to in their 80s, who that's how broad we are as a club. And so we all pulled together effectively behind myself and Dean Charalambus of Bastion Legal. Give him a plug, and we were successful, and we are where we are here. So yeah, look, the toll was significant. It cost me between 60 and 100 hours of my professional time. So if I was to put that into perspective of my normal legal practice, someone would have to cop a pretty hefty bill somewhere along the way, and so I did it. I did it mates rates for the Camrea Cricket Club. Put it that way.
John, I've got two questions on the back of that. One is you being objective and by the law versus A, being involved with the club, and B, lots of emotions and lots of A, trust of you and your process, but also noise around saying, but what about this? What about that? Oh, this is unfair, blah, 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 and keeping a level track. And then B, trusting your own process to know, no, actually there is an injustice here. We need to go down this process. And then maybe somewhere along the line you're going, potentially it's not going to work?
Look, feedback, they say feedback is a gift. It certainly was no gift to me. I was very, very clear, laser focused in my mind as to the direction we needed to go. And yeah, there were interactions with the committee about the process, what was going on. But I said, I gave advice to the committee. Follow my way. Leave this with me. This is cricket club business at a different level to what is the usual course of events of running a club and stocking the fridges and making sure people have paid their subscriptions. This is the law. This is litigation, and litigation is all that I do. And so, whilst the collective brainstorming of those around me was of good support, it wasn't of great assistance. But that I didn't mind. But because I love the people that are there, they had access to me, obviously. And our president at the time, Danny, this is under his watch. So as the president of the club, he was pretty shaken up by the whole thing because it was incredibly unfair. And he trusted in me, he trusted in the process, and we overcame.